This episode is in partnership with Authority Magazine. Authority Magazine, a Medium publication, is devoted to sharing in depth and interesting interviews featuring people who are authorities in business, pop culture, wellness, social impact, and tech.
Today's episode is a reminder that we're all connected in ways that are both personal and profound. My guest, Harris Goldberg, my twin brother, is a screenwriter and director behind multiple films, including Numb, which starred Matthew Perry. And with Caitlin Morrison, Matthew's sister, as my co-host, this conversation brings that connection full circle. Harris, welcome to Believe in People.
Thrilled to be here.
Okay, well, I mentioned in the intro that Caitlin is Matthew Perry's sister, and I'm your twin. So, okay, let's be honest here. Do you think growing up with siblings makes life more creatively inspired, or just way more chaotic, or something completely different?
I think anything personal and family oriented adds to the creative process, like anything in your life. And I think you take a lot of stuff from your family life because it's ingrained in you so early. So those patterns often become like the themes of what you're writing about, things like that. Those kind of relationships and tensions and conflicts and humor or whatever it is. So.
Wow. I was just waiting. That's very insightful, Hair.
Yeah, profound.
I know that had to sink in for a second.
When you write 8 hours a day for 35 years, you get a little introspective sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It's neat to see Caitlin because, Matthew is such profound relationship in my life for so long. So it's very special.
Let's talk about that. About that. Tell us what, I know I was like, I have a million questions, right? But I'm like, I'm not hogging the conversation.
I'm so enjoying just learning the dynamic between the two of you that I'm shutting up.
Actually, that's funny because, yeah, it is kind of weird to have us on the same podcast. Hair, does that feel weird to you?
No, not at all.
Oh, well, that's kind of cool. Well, okay, let's get into it actually, because Numb was based on your real. So, Harris did a movie called Numb for the viewers and listeners, and it was based on my brother Harris's real life experience with deep personalization, and that's a whole other beast. I hope we'll talk about it.
I was writing a lot of broad comedies, a lot of Adam Sandler stuff, and I wasn't the Deuce Bigelow stuff. And then I did a film called Without a Paddle for Paramount, and it did well, but I was getting really miserable writing these because I'd go see them and I thought they were, I don't know, I wanted something, and I was going through this rough time in Los Angeles. Like you said, it was sort of it was an anxiety-based thing, too much pressure and everything. And so I thought maybe I'll quit. I don't know what I'm going to do. So I just started writing something I really wanted to do, which turned out to be Numb, which was really a cathartic. It started almost like a journal, really. And then I just got into it and I started writing in a different way. And it got to be quite profound. And then I went, hey, wait a minute. I think there's a movie here, but there's a lot of voiceover and stuff. So then I decided, oh, if I put a love story in there, that I might be able to anchor, what I'm trying to say around the love story. And I used a relationship in my life as the basis of that. And it just came out. And I just wrote this thing thinking, no way anyone's going to ever do this. So I finished it and I thought, I didn't know what it was. I knew it was, I knew it was raw and I knew that it was, intense. But so I had finished a film for Fox with a producer named Paul Schiff. And Paul had done Rushmore, the Wes Anderson movie. So he was the first guy I called and I said, hey, Paul, I wrote this movie and I remember I told my agents at the time, I wrote and they said, don't send it out. It's too personal. It'll affect your other stuff. So that's why I sent it just to Paul. And within 24 hours, he called me and said, he said, this is really raw. I really like this. He goes, can I run with this? And I said, okay, thinking nothing will happen. And then I got a call saying, what do you think of Matthew Perry? Now, in all honesty, okay, of course I knew who Matthew was. I didn't watch a ton of Friends because I was never really, but I knew who he was and I knew that he was hilarious. But my gut feeling was I thought, oh, he's not the right guy. It's too funny. It's too light. It's not that kind of movie. So I kind of left it alone. And then suddenly I got a phone call one day from Matty or Matthew. And he goes, I got to meet you, right? Like right now. And I was like, wow. And he has a way about him that was very, I don't know. We just kind of like, I was nervous, but we were kind of connected. And he said, meet me at this coffee shop. And he had a place down on Doheny, up on the, like this penthouse thing. So I remember almost not wanting to go because because I just spent years and years, being partnered with these really funny, SNL guys, and I'd spend a year with these guys trying to, figure out what's the movie, and I'd hang out with them and get really close, and I this just seemed different. So I met Matthew, and as soon as I met him, what was weird was he seemed almost more nervous than I did. What's going on?
Caitlin, does that sound familiar?
It was.
A little bit, because I mean, the dream for him was always the serious stuff, right? He had the comedy in the bag,
Yeah.
but he wanted he wanted to show off the serious bit. So it makes a lot of sense. It would be like oh, please accept me. Please, please.
Yeah.
Huh.
But we spent, I don't know, 4 hours together, and it was like it was so intense, and it was so vulnerable and open. It was like we were like two old war buddies who'd been through a war together. And he was saying, he had just gotten out of the hospital, and he was in a very vulnerable state. And I was really embarrassed by this script because I was like, oh, it's so, I didn't want to say it was somewhat autobiographical, and so I was very careful. And so we were both kind of like almost like it was almost like a date. I mean, it was kind of like, and I couldn't believe it. Like I say, yeah, but I was like this, and he goes, no, 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 I got something worse. And I go, no, no, I got something. And by the end of it, I was like, holy moly. And he said, I've got to play this role. I know this guy. I can do this. And I was, at that point, I was sort of going like, I was thinking, oh, Toby Maguire will do it or something like that. So I said, look, why don't we hang out and see if you even like me? You might hate my guts, and I'll hang out with you, and we'll just hang out and see if you want to do it after a week. And he agreed to do that. And then we became so tight. I would see him every single day, every night. We
I
just,
have a really sweet picture that I will post of the two of you arm in arm. Like it's so sweet.
I mean, he just took me into his world. Like this almost became, for me, I don't want to say it was wasn't it an ego thing? It was the satisfaction of having someone who loved what you wrote so much. And I don't know what it was that grabbed him. It's like he said, I've got to convey this thing. If
Was
I'm
it
going
tough
off.
for him to do the role hair? Because I remember you saying he had to play it really small. Was it tough for
Well,
him?
well, the thing about Maddie, and again, it's weird having Caitlin here because she knows everything about.
You can talk smack about him. I don't.
No, no, no. It's just so it is that Matthew is one of these guys. I found that he's one of these natural guys who is his reaction, his comedic ability was so natural. I mean, he was like on par with, what Peter Sellers would have been like, or so and so. He just his comeback. He was brilliant, and because of that, I thought, okay, here's a guy who's been like this his whole life, just a natural gift. It's like Eli Nastase playing tennis. He just was born with it. Yet he wanted to do this other thing, which is this deeper thing. And I thought geez, I'm going to be asking him to be vulnerable in this, and he's going to feel uncomfortable. And that's what I was worried about because I really wasn't, I was insecure about the thing too. And so I kept sort of saying, look, why don't we, let's talk about the script. And he really liked to go out at night. Like, so he'd call me at 10 o'clock and say, come on over. And I'd be, oh my God, I'd be ready for bed. I'd drive over to his place and he'd be ready to go. And we would go to these, these places, hotels and things like that. And it was very busy and it was exciting for me, but I was like, Matthew, we can't, how are we going to talk about this script with all this? But he says, it's okay. So I felt like he was kind of not wanting to get to the meat of it. And so as a director of this, I was worried that, oh, this is going to make this thing look funnier than it was. And I didn't want to be too light. So I just started going out with him all the time. And he was doing stuff like taking me out for my birthday with all these, celebrities. And whenever he was doing something, it sort of became like we were like brothers. I mean, it really was. We had some hilarious times. But I remember CA was representing it and they had these investors and Matthew and I had to fly to Las Vegas to meet these investors. Flash you, flash you, flash you, flash you.
Thank you. I put on mute.
So we get to Las Vegas, and here I am. And the thing I didn't realize about him is that he was like a Beatle. I mean, I was not prepared for, no matter where we went, the mobs of people that I realized, oh my God, like this guy has gotten into the zeitgeist of wherever we went. It's like people wanted to be with him in a way that was. So I just started watching him, kind of going like, okay, what can I use here? Like what gestures can I use? And I just would sort of just observe him. But we had the secret handshake that we did. I still remember it. It was like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we go like this. And we used to do it like 20,000 times a day. So whenever we saw each other, it's like, hey,
Caitlin, did you ever have a secret handshake with your brother?
A few different ones, a few different ones, because the fun thing was coming up with them. So it was always like a
Oh,
different one
that's
for a week or
great.
two.
so we were jumping through hoops and we finally got it financed. And we were going to shoot in Vancouver. And we weren't really talking about the script and I got nervous. And I thought, you know what? I don't think, I'm going to be honest. I said, I don't think Matthew's the right guy. So I said, I need to speak with you because we were going out all the time and we were having fun and it was a riot, but I was going, this is not going to work. So he goes, what's wrong? I go, let's just get together. It was almost like a breakup. And I go meet him at the Starbucks on Sunset in Doheny. And he's like, what's wrong? And I said, I think, I don't know if this is going to work. And I was honest about him. I said, you're not going to want to listen to what I'm going to say because Matthew was so comfortable. And I know this from working with the SNL guys. When you're funny, you have a sort of this bag of tricks that you go to that you're going to get a reaction to. So you can make someone laugh, you can make someone, and it's very easy. And I said, I don't want you to do that because he's a really good actor. And I said, you don't have to do anything because you're so expressive. That's what I want. I want the small things. And I used to say, I want you to be my Gregory Peck. And we really bonded over old movies because like me, his historical knowledge of old movies was on par with mine. And I was always felt sort of weird about because I would always comment on movies from the 40s and 50s and these black and white things. And no one ever got the reference. And Matthew goes, oh, and we would do the lines. And I'd go, how does this guy know this stuff? So I would go, I want to do this bit like, did you ever see this movie? And he'd go, yeah. And he goes, I got it. So I said, I don't think you're going to want to listen to me when we're on the set. You're a big star. I'm going to ask you to do things. It's not going to be it's not going to be pally pally. We're partners on this, but I'm going to be directing you. And he goes, what do you want me to do? I said, I just don't think you're going to want to listen to me. He goes, what if I, and he made me a promise. He goes, what if I promise to listen to you and I won't pull a, like, I'll let you direct me. And I looked at him and it was a real moment, really was. And I said, okay. And from that moment on, we had the most magical, we went there together. He did exactly anything, because what I would say is we do the scene and, he'd always like he'd push it a little bit and I'd come right and it was always him and I really close. I didn't There's like no one else existed. I'd go over to him and I'd always whisper to him and go and we'd be sitting alone and I just go from here to here. You don't need to do anything. Nothing. Because I got you. And he would just do the littlest thing and it would be really profound.
Well, it was really, I mean, for those who have not seen Numb, and I know we're talking about this, but as for viewers and listeners, when they do see it, Matthew plays the smallest of roles, and yet he's surrounded by a team of real, uh, exaggerated, I would say, characters. The
They were they,
girlfriend.
they were pretty accurate. I mean, we were very lucky to have like he and I were both involved in the casting of like I would ask him, what do you think about this person? And he'd say, oh, I like her, I like it. And we had a really good cast, and we were very lucky because we had the love interest was Lynn Collins, and
Yeah.
we had quite a few people who wanted to come in and play opposite him, and I was surprised when we were casting. But when Lynn came, she had just finished replacing Kate Blanchett in The Merchant of Venice with Jeremy Irons and Al Pacino, and she did a spectacular job. And she was a real actor. I mean, theatrically, I mean, really great. And she came and she just blew me away. And so I remember going to Matthew's place because we would tape the auditions. And I went to Matthew's late at night and I would show him all the people that came through. And I didn't say anything. I said, tell me who you respond to. And he's like, "Woo, woo, woo." And he sees her and he goes, her. And I was like, perfect. So we brought on Lynn and that really made it, they were terrific together.
And how did you get Mary Steenburgen?
Originally, the first person I was going to use was Trudy Styler, who was married to Sting, and
Oh,
I re
yeah.
and I liked Trudy a lot, and we met. And I remember Trudy invited me to Sting's birthday party, and I go there and I met him, and I wanted her to do it. And the financier says we can't use her at the last minute. She doesn't mean anything funny. Like I need somebody bigger, and it was a real hard thing to do, but I said like you, and they gave me a list of people, and I asked Mary if she would do it, and she said okay. And Mary also sort of had a bit of an anxiety disorder too, so it was a sort of hilarious shoot because it's basically I had Matthew in one hand, and then she was like, I can't go to the dinner with the, and I would say, well, let's let's have a thing where I'll hold your hand, and if you want to go out, you squeeze it twice, and if you want to stay, you squeeze it once, and if you're, and we had this thing, so it's like I was very lucky to have all these sort of
Was it hard wrapping that movie hair, by the way? Just,
well,
that's,
it was great for me because I think Matthew and I thought we were like he was so happy about it that I was happy about it. It was a hard shoot, but he was so supportive. Like I went, oh boy, if this was if every director had an actor like this, like I'd do everything with this guy. I mean, I really loved the guy. I mean, we were like, I mean, 7 days a week I would see the guy. And when we finished the movie, we premiered it at Tribeca Film Festival in New York. And I remember we went for the opening thing, and it was like, red carpet thing dingy, and it was a pretty big opening. I mean, it was a big theater, few thousand people. And I remember when it came on, I was really nervous because I'd seen it so many times, and I thought, oh God, this is going to be. And I remember I was just nervous about Matthew not liking it because he hadn't seen it, and now it was all locked with the movie, with the music and everything. So it comes on, and it was the movie comes on. I remember not even looking at it. I was just looking down. And after it was over, I remember he was sitting behind me. His hand comes up behind me, he squeezes me like this, and he goes, "Good job." And that to me made it all worthwhile. And then then that night there was a party afterwards, and he was very excited because he thought this is the movie we made. The movie, it's kind of getting a cult following now, and it's often touted as like the third or fourth best Matthew movie, but a lot of people don't know about it. I check it once or twice a year just to see and
But
it's
I
sort of.
think, but here, sorry to interrupt, but I think what's so profound, and particularly the relationship too with Caitlin and what Caitlin's created for Matthew, the Matthew Perry House,
Yeah.
is that and mental well-being and support is that you subsequently received quite a few emails to say this was profound for me. This I didn't. No one understood my emotions around, let's say, depersonalization or my feeling because it hadn't been defined. And so didn't people come up to you and say, this really helped me?
Well, yeah, I didn't say it was autobiographical until about, the we did quite a few film festivals. And then after a while, I would just say, oh, people were seemed to be intrigued at, with the Q&As going like, how did you come up with this weird? And I would say, oh, and I'd sort of make up stuff. And then finally I said, okay, it's kind of autobiographical. And that kind of opened up where people started to come up and started wanting to talk about the actual subject matter as opposed to, it was like the movie was one thing, but it would create another conversation. Like I had some kind of answers to
Yeah.
something.
And can I ask you, so I know that just from a reader, the viewer listener standpoint, um, depersonalization, it sounds foreign. Is that a heightened level of anxiety?
Well, everyone has it to some degree, but it's what it is it's like, it's a sense of like watching yourself, and it's a symptom of anxiety. So if people will have it when they have panic attacks and stuff, you kind of get this tunnel vision and you just sort of feel like you're watching, and it's your body's protective way of going, oh, we can't handle all this cortisol shooting through our system, and we're perceiving danger and all this stuff. So it sort of separates you, it gives you a sense of separation, so that you're not, your heart's not racing and all that. So yeah, so I started getting it after being in LA for a while, and I started to get panic attacks,
It's like
and that
LA will do that. Yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
God, the freeways.
yeah.
Sorry, I identify with that.
exactly.
And I think I probably had a predisposition to anxiety since I was a kid anyway. So it was like a cumulative thing, and that was this my symptom of choice, I guess, that happened, and it was very uncomfortable, and no one knew what it was back then because it was. So I started to research it and all that sort of stuff, and as I was trying to figure it out, it started to get in the zeitgeist, of because anxiety started to creep up, and now it's like people call all the time and they go, "Oh, I saw your movie. What do I do?" And I go, "Well, let's do this and this and this and this is what's
Do you think writing was a bet? Because it's so funny the
happening."
similarities between you and Maddie are like he was a tennis player, you were a tennis player. The emotional and mental challenges. Was writing a good bet for you growing up? Like, did you think, yeah, this is what I want to do? I mean, I'm your twin, I know you, but
Well, I mean, actually, Matthew and I were very similar because we both used humor as a self-defense mechanism, in my opinion. So when we were in social situations, I was kind of like the miniature Matthew when I was alone. But he was, and so we had this real rhythm thing going. It was just sort of like it was just, I knew what he was thinking. He knew what I was thinking. It was just boom, 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 boom. I didn't have to say anything. And I think he felt comfortable with me. And I felt, I wasn't like, in awe of him, or like, I just thought of him as like, oh, I care about this guy. And I would tell him what I thought about stuff, and we would talk, and we would be vulnerable to each other, which, I don't think we got to do. I never get to do that most in my life for the most part. And I got the sense he didn't either. And we kind of had those moments. So I still look back on it as and I always kept in touch with him, was always worried about him and saying, how you doing? And,
and
and
Caitlin, did you meet Harris and have you two ever met in person?
I don't think we have we? If
I
I was,
used,
maybe
I
I was.
used to go over to, I used to go over to, in Ojai, to John's house all the time. And
Oh, I
I,
didn't do that. I
Who's
yeah,
I didn't
yeah,
go
John?
there.
I don't
Who's
think I
John
did.
here?
What?
Who's John?
That's Maddie's
Maddie's dad.
dad.
Oh, okay.
And so we would go up and have like Thanksgiving, and it was kind of like a quirky, like, it was a kind of he'd always talk about you, and I'd go, why isn't she here? Like, I don't get it. Like, and then I realized, oh, I did, it took me a while to go, oh, his father was divorced from the mom, and it was like all this stuff. And so, it was sort of, because they were so close, in proximity,
Mhm.
we would go and play, and they'd
Mhm.
have these dinners and things. And
And Caitlin, do you remember Harris? Do you remember Maddie mentioning Numb, like talking about Numb? Like, what was his experience in that?
He talked about it a little bit. He talked about it like when we were I was also really into the classic movie thing, and it was something we kind of bonded over too, and we talked
Ah,
about a lot. And so when we would watch something that was sort of, profound and deep and not the usual, 10 or Splash or whatever the comedy of the day was for us. But when we would watch something like Days of Wine and Roses, for example, or something like that, and I would talk about how much I kind of responded to the acting or responded to this or that. He would use Numb as like his, I'm a very serious actor too. And here's an example of me being a very serious actor.
wow.
But what I love about the whole sort of, I mean, I realize it's an abridged, but like the origin story of the two of you is it's so it it's very cool to hear that I think you both have kind of the same thing in terms of comedy, boisterousness, talent, that kind of thing, being the armor, and needing to tiptoe into that trusting relationship with all of the, the late night going out and the going to Vegas together. And I want to hear the Vegas story, or I don't want to hear the Vegas story. I'm not sure, but like that sort of thing is like testing the waters with each other and getting to the point where the biggest way that he could take off the armor is for somebody to say do nothing, like do nothing.
yeah, and it I
And
think
that's
it
what
drove
you asked
right.
of him. And at the same time, you're taking off your armor by writing this project that's so deeply
Yeah.
personal to you. And so no and so knowing that the two of you had each other for that sort of self-exposing but deeply personal and important experience. I love that. Like it makes me very, very grateful that you were around for that, that you let that happen for him.
Well, I think it was serendipity. It was both. It was just that we were just sort of. It just sort of was the perfect time of, he was doing his thing, I was doing mine, and we both wanted to do something. Like, I didn't expect to do it. I don't think he did, and
Mm.
it was just like, um, actually, it's hard to even describe because there's so many small little moments where. Do you want to hear one little quirky story that was sweet?
Of course.
Yeah.
I remember he said, "Hey, I got to get some t-shirts and jeans. Will you go with me?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So I go to his place, and we go to this place on Rodeo Drive, but it was like a back door thing. I'm like, what is this place? And we go to the top floor of one of these, and it was like a private, like a shop, kind of thing. So we go to the top, and there's like all these clothes and everything. There's one guy, and he was kind of over the top. Hey, Matthew. And we're looking around, and we're looking at this, like these t-shirts and jeans, but they were really expensive. And I'm following around like a dog, and he's picking out stuff. And I can tell the guy's just pushing all this stuff on me. Oh, look at these shoes. So we all have that. And I remember I'm going like, and we go, and he rings it up. I go, and Matthew could tell I was kind of like rolling my eyes. I've got all these bags, and we come, he goes, "What's wrong?" I go, "Ah, nothing." He goes, "No, tell me what's wrong." I go, "You could go to the Gap and get this stuff for like 25. This is nuts, just because he used to always wear like jeans and these sort of shoelaceless Converse and black t-shirts and stuff." I go, "I mean, I can get you like 10 of these for nothing." And then, but instead of getting like upset or challenge, he would go, "Yeah, it's a good point." He goes, "Will you go back and return them for me?" And I go, "I don't want to go." He goes, "No, we'll go. Let's go. I'll go with you right now." He goes, I can't." I go, "We just left there. Let's grab the receipt. We'll go back and we'll say we made a mistake, or you got to think about something." And he goes, "No, no, I can't. I can't." I
It
said,
would be
"Okay."
written up in the it would be written up Matthew returns.
Yeah. So I remember I said, "Well, then I'll give it to me. I'll go." And he goes, "Oh no." He says, "What are you going to say? It's my fault." I go, "No, I'm just going to say it's something, whatever." So he had like a lot. It was like it was like kind of. I always felt like it was like I went. If I was gay, this would be like a married couple. That's like, that's what I felt with him. I felt like, he'd always he'd put his eye on, like he'd be watching something, and he, like me, like he would see a woman, and he suddenly would just fall in love with her, and then he'd just zero in on and just say, "Okay, I gotta get that." But yet
It sounds familiar.
we were both insecure
Mm.
when it came to women. It's like, I would get self-loathing, he would get self-loathing, and it was hilarious for us to talk, because I'm like, "What are you talking about? You're Matthew Perry." And he goes, "Yeah, but he always say I have a chinook," which I put in the movie, because I said, "What's a chinook?" He goes, "A chin that goes right to my neck, just straight down." He
It's
goes,
called a what? A Chinook?
A Chinook.
A
"Chinook."
Chinook.
I said, "We got to put that
This
in the
is,
movie."
first of all, I think it's really sweet because look at the three of us. I mean, we're siblings. I mean, from Caitlin to Matthew's sister, you're my brother. I mean, it's just so sweet. And I think it's just wonderful. And clearly, Maddie's missed. I mean, it's a gap and a void
Well,
in
it's
all.
weird
And
for me to be, because I actually want to ask Caitlin about, 10 million questions. So I'm
why? What
doing
do you
all,
want to
But this
ask?
is
Go
your
ahead.
time. This
No, go
is
ahead.
your time.
You can ask what?
no, well, I look, I really,
Did
I miss,
Maddie really like me? No.
I miss Matthew. It was weird. I mean, it was weird because, we lost our older brother, Danny, who was in the film business, and I really looked up to him. And Matthew kind of went almost the same time. I just talked to him, uh, like 2 weeks before, and I remember the last thing he wrote to me was, I said, "Hey man, where are you?" And he said, and I think he was in the UK, or I can't remember, but he says, "Oh, I'm gonna be back. Let's get together, buddy." And
Mm.
that's what he used to, and I thought, "Oh, great." He goes, "Yeah, let's hang." That's what I
Same. Yeah.
thought. Oh, that'll be great, because I hadn't seen him in a while, and I I was a little concerned about him, to be honest, because when we did Numb, he looked really great. He was in good shape. He was completely, we were just focused. And I had been watching some interviews with him in the book, doing his book tour, and I thought, um, I don't know, I was just a little concerned. So it still affects me, like in the same way that our brother passing away, like those two things have this weight to it. And if I look at a photograph of him, I still get, like choked up, or I have this sense of like, damn it, like I wish I could have talked to him before. I bet you could have, all that kind of cool
Mm.
stuff, and um, so yeah, so when I see Caitlin, I kind of see it's like
Of
a
course.
version of Matthew, and I kind of want to do something, or I want to ask something, or I want to, and I don't know what it is, because we're just connecting. So it's a weird.
Um, I'm here. You call me anytime. Well, you ask me whatever you want.
Yeah.
But it is, it's one of the weird things for me. So I think, we both understand the kind of the worry and the loss and all this stuff. And I have our last text exchange saved on my, and thank goodness I did, because all of the other ones, they go away. Like they take them away after. Who knew? I know now that AT&T or whatever deletes all those eventually. Anyway, um, but the thing that I have found is that in missing him, I I find I almost adopt in conversations, especially when I'm sort of feeling awkward, like I don't know somebody really well or I don't feel comfortable with them. So not in this situation. But I find that I will like take on his personality a little bit. Like I'll lean into the sarcasm and the oh yeah, you should narrate more kind of thing. And I don't know if it's like it's like a wanting to feel the closeness or what it is, um but that's been an interesting thing. Like it's like you need to find your own way to kind of keep them around,
Yeah. And,
right?
and the thing is, he was one of these guys, and it's only happened twice in my life with him and an older guy, but he's one of these guys that you just wanted to hang out with him, just to hang out with him because he made everything, I don't know, it was just sort of like he would do this thing. We'd be driving around and he'd go, hey, and he says, how, and he'd ask me some profound question like, hey, what do you think about life? And I go, well, I think, and then he'd turn up the volume of the car
Oh yeah,
really
that's what
loud.
you did to me.
Yeah, yes.
That's hilarious. That's where you got that? Oh
Oh,
my God, that's hilarious.
it was like we were, it was like, we were like a comedy team. And that was the problem is that on the set, it really was like a little bit of a playground where it'd be like, okay, we gotta, come on, we gotta get
Yeah,
serious.
you need to get down a
Oh,
bit.
that's
Or the
hilarious.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Tell me more about that. I'm very interested in your story and then the falling asleep.
Yeah.
The falling asleep.
Yeah.
When
He
you
goes,
start
really?
talking.
Yeah, you go, so really, so you've never been in love? I go, no, I just haven't. It
That's
was,
hilarious.
yeah. But
Well, I'm
Yeah,
glad that he had an opportunity to play a more serious role. And
yeah.
he did in other things, didn't he, Caitlin? What else did he play in?
oh, I mean, he did
Oh yeah, there were several. And when he started to do the plays, like that, I think
and he was a
that
really
was
good,
his favorite. That
he
was
was
a
a,
challenge for him, but that was his favorite, I think,
yeah,
doing play.
he's a
Oh,
great
cool.
writer. He's a
Hmm.
good director too. And
Yeah. But
he,
there was this weird thing, like if you name anybody in my life, and that includes my other siblings, it includes my close family, anybody, any friend, anyone. I can remember 50 to 60% of the times that we spent together. Maybe on a good day, probably more like 2%, right? You don't remember all of the things. But there was this sort of almost like a glittering exuberance to all of the times that you spend with Manu, with Maddie, with Matthew. And you kind of said it too. There was like this special quality. It didn't need to be a particularly interesting day. It could be, sitting around doing nothing or in a coffee shop. But there was something about him where you just like it was important. Whatever, no matter how unimportant it was, it just felt important and more fun somehow. And so I feel like for him, like I have this sort of almost the full narrative of our lives together that anybody else, I would have lost so many of the pieces of it because those moments sort of would have vanished the minute they were over.
yeah,
Yeah.
he was very, to me, he was a real dichotomy and a rare thing, by the way, because I don't think anyone will ever be, when you think about it, you don't get to that, you don't have that kind of, when you're vulnerable, okay,
Mm.
you get that kind of fame. I mean, there's not going to be that kind of fame again, like that kind of, because remember when he hit that with that show, that was a time when there were only, three, four networks at the most.
Hmm.
It was all, when you had a hit show, it was, a 40 million share, or 50 million people watching it. Now it's like it's all splintered and everyone, it wasn't the same kind of like I like when we would shoot locations, I would have to change locations on the spot because we'd be in some parking lot in the middle of nowhere and they say, okay, we're going to shoot. And I come and there'd be like 300 people showed up somehow. And I go, what? And they'd be going, ah, and I'd go, what? How did they know we were here? How did they get here? And he was like this magnet, and for that year and a bit or a year before the movie or whatever, wherever we would go, I'd be amazed, just the people that it was like being with a Beatle. I went, wow, this is what, and I went, boy, that must be tough. And because when you're vulnerable, or you're not vulnerable, he wasn't vulnerable. He was strong, but when you're sensitive,
Hmm.
that's when you're sensitive, and you're trying to, and you've reached this plateau, and that it's very seductive to be
Hmm.
there because but when you want more and you're searching for something, it's very hard it's like having to, it's like being like you know, it's like, you want to have a hit movie, but on the other hand, you want to do something that you're proud of too. But you go, do I
Yeah.
do a big commercial movie that I know is gonna, or do I try this one and roll the dice that it's like he was like that to me. He was like a philosopher stuck in, this sort of
But
gift.
I have to say, I think first of all, I think I know we're coming towards the end, and I
Yeah,
know I'm laughing because I think believe in people. Well, no question we believed in Maddie, no question we believed in our older brother. Like we admire our brothers, honestly. Maddie passed away, our older brother passed away, profound losses, profound. Not one day goes by that I know Harris and I talk about loss. And I think that that's what's so sweet about this, that they're not gone. They're massively in our hearts. But Harris, for you, you talk about Numb more than Do Spigolo, Mel Gigolo, Without a Paddle. I mean, all the other films you've
because
done.
when I look at math, even though it's Matthew, okay, when I look at that, I go, he's channeling. It's like we became two, like, 'cause when we would do, the last thing I'll say is when we would do a scene, I would never say, do it this way, or I would say, here's what happened in real life. Have you ever had something? And he goes, yes, I had something. I go, okay, that's what this is about. I want you to go to your thing. So, whatever the scene would be. So it was like, I was telling him the thing I was going through, and then he would take that, identify with it, and then morph it a little bit into how he went through it. So still, when I look at the movie, I sort of see myself through his eyes, and it's eerie for me. And when you said, yeah, and I still find it, I get empty when I think of him. Like it's hard for me to go, he's not here. It hurts me. And I mean, here's, Caitlin right here, his sister. So it's just a weird thing because of the subject matter and just how intense it was, and the fact that this film still exists. And I see, I remember how much we talked about it every moment, and I know where his thing's coming from, and I know where, my stuff's coming from. And it was almost like, I don't know. It's like someone sort of playing a version of you, but they're them.
He did. He actually did that beautifully.
He was
Mhm.
fantastic. He's a great
Yeah,
actor.
that was a really good movie.
He was a great actor. Great. And whether he believed it or not, I don't know, but he was a wonderfully powerful actor. And uh, he just had that thing, that whatever that it quality. And I think he was trying to figure out what it was, but he didn't have to. He just had it. That's why I would say he was my Gregory Peck. And people say that I'd be at Q and A's, and they'd say, "What do you mean by that?" I go, in the Academy Awards, when they're showing a retrospective, and then they push into an actor's face, and you just see them like this, and they don't have to say anything. It's just there. I said he has that. Doesn't say a word. You just push into him, and you see all these emotions and things, and you don't know. You just feel it. I go,
Yeah,
he had that, and that's very rare for an actor to have that. You either have it or you don't. And he had it. That's why I said, you don't have to do anything, man. Nothing.
that's
And
amazing. Hey,
that's it.
Hare,
Yeah.
why do you believe in people?
I believe in some people.
Mhm.
I struggle believing in myself. I struggle believing in certain things, unconditional. Like, I believe in the hope of people that that they
Wow.
that they do the right thing, and that I think I believe in the goodness of people, although it juxtaposed with the harshness of the rest of it. So when you do find it, the goodness in someone, it's nice. You want to grab onto it, and that's why you have so few, friends, or you're lucky if you find a relationship that's lifelong, and you cherish them. And that's why when people pass away and things like, they end up having two or three friends, and even though they've had a whirlwind life, so.
This is a really interesting Believe in People episode. Caitlin Harris, thank you, really.